we plan to organize in the banner of Heartian Beavers, the Technology, Innovation and Adoption Group at Sacred Heart College. This webinar is being live streamed through our online channel and social media platforms. The resource person for today's webinar is Dr. Muralee Thummarukudy, the Chief of Operations at the Disaster Risk Reduction Wing of United Nations Environment Program. We are also proud to say that he is one of our parents. His has become a household name among the Malayalis the world over and all others interested in development and education. Today he will speak on a subject of utmost topical relevance for all of us: how to prepare for a world of learning that is transitoring to digital platform. As you listen to him, you can post your questions as comments along with your name and location. Our moderators will forward them to Dr. Thummarukudy during the question and answer session. More instructions in this regard can be found in the video description. Finally, please like and subscribe to SS Vision, our YouTube channel. Now over to Dr. Muralee Thummarukudy. Over to you, sir.
Good morning, my friends, wherever you are on earth. Good afternoon, good evening, etc. I hope you are safe in whichever part of the world you are currently in. I'm extremely happy to talk to you today about this topic of online teaching. Now, before I go to my topic, I want to thank the Sacred Heart College for giving me this platform to reach out to thousands of teachers across Kerala, but I also understand that a number of teachers have registered from other parts of India, but also other parts of the world. I also want to thank a number of people who have helped me in preparing this lecture. In particular, I want to acknowledge Ms. Srija Unithan, who is teaching online in Dubai. I want to acknowledge my colleague Sophie Brown, who reached out to a number of teachers in Europe and collected feedback on how they have been teaching and what are the lessons which they learned. I want to thank Neeraja Janaki, who assisted me with all the ground research and prepared all the background material, which I'll share with you after the session. I also want to welcome a number of other people who are joining online, those who are not registered but joining online to this session. Now, I will start by explaining why we should be teaching online. Now, for most of you, it's very clear why you are teaching online, because it's a lockdown period. It's a default option. There are no other options. So we are going online. But that's not the only reason. The world has been going online for some time now. And the world will be going online in future. So this is the future. And therefore, don't think this as a stopgap arrangement till the time the colleges will reopen. The colleges may reopen in 2 months, maybe in 6 months, maybe in a year. But even after the colleges reopen, the whole idea of online teaching will continue, because it actually predated the lockdown and COVID. The revolution in the massive open online courses started as early as 2008 and picked up momentum in the 2010 to 20s. And this is definitely going to continue. Online platforms such as Coursera and edX are now the biggest universities in the world. And very soon, there will be such dominant universities across the world that individual teaching institutions will have to lose almost their relevance and start to hook on to online teaching. But there are other reasons as well. The future belongs to a time where everybody will have to be digitally literate. The students will have to be digitally literate because that is going to be their working style. The students will also have to be autonomous because hundreds of millions of jobs will go home and people will have to work from home. So students will have to be taught those skills. But most importantly, students will also have to learn to a future where collaboration and networking are the main currencies of career development. And online teaching will have to teach all that. So online teaching is not just about taking your course, whatever course you have been teaching, English, economics, literature, whatever, online. But online teaching is also about preparing your students for a new future where they are able to autonomously do what they are supposed to do, but also collaborate with others. That's why we must continue to focus on online teaching even after the schools and colleges reopen. I'm not a teacher by profession, but I have been working in the domain of online teaching for at least last 10 years. I worked with my colleagues in the United Nations to prepare the first massive open online course on disasters, resilience, and climate change in 2014. And when we launched, we had 112,000 students from 183 countries. And now we are preparing another online course where we are targeting to deliver it in 6 languages and attract 100,000 students. And my job mainly was not to teach, but to help people to prepare and teach those courses well. We had conducted with the Kerala State Higher Education Council a seminar in 2014 on going online. And we had made a number of recommendations as to how teachers, universities, and students should prepare to go online. But unfortunately, the pace of offtake of the recommendations were not very fast. But we are where we are, and as Arun Shauri often says, in India, breakthrough often comes from a breakdown. And we are at that point of breakdown, where the academic calendar, the last one, was severely disrupted. Many colleges could not complete their semester. Students could not write their exams, and their future right now, at least, is in a crisis. New academic semester is due to start in June, and students and parents are once again worried about their future. So we have no option but to get colleges, schools started. And with social distancing and other constraints, the only way to do is to go online. And therefore, we are having a unique opportunity in the middle of a crisis. And that's where we should jump in with all the constraints which we have and learn this new technology. The first thing I want you to remember is that online teaching is not just taking your course online and delivering it exactly as you would have delivered in a classroom. That will be the wrong way to look at online teaching. If you are to look at the previous syllabus, prepare a PowerPoint, and every day you come to the class, put the PowerPoint up, and then teach as you used to teach, then you will not be using the full potential of online teaching, and students will not be learning the new skills which are required in the new world. So please do not consider online teaching as just teaching your lessons onto a camera. That is not the idea. Online teaching is an entirely new paradigm, and therefore you should look at the entire aspect of teaching, of communicating knowledge, facilitating interaction, helping students to be autonomous and learn at their own pace, but also how do you then evaluate the educational outcomes? Many people in many universities around the world were initially worried that face-to-face teaching is fundamentally different than online teaching, and therefore students will not learn as much from online teaching as you would do in face-to-face classrooms. There have been research all the way from 2008, and every research has consistently came out with the conclusion that the educational outcomes are identical and sometimes even better for online teaching. So don't worry about communicating knowledge. It is on other parts of education where online teaching has to improvise, because college or schools are not just places where people go to learn. They're also places where you go and make friendships, where you form networks, where you create lifelong relationship with your peer group and also connect with your seniors. How do you create that type of systems and support in a virtual environment? That is actually the bigger challenge of online teaching. Online teaching right now is happening at a speed which is unheard of. More than 1.5 billion students are right now sitting at home, of which 1/4, I think, are in India, or 1/5. How do we get them back to the learning routine is a challenge the entire world is right now facing, and everybody is improvising. In a normal time, one would have had a lot more time to plan for it. But even now, before letting teachers run with planning to deliver their own courses online, the university or the government or the college, if the college is autonomous, should spend some time planning the online teaching paradigm. This means, should the course content be the same, or should that be slightly amended? Should the educational outcome be the same, or should they be amended? What should be the teaching routine? One teacher, one classroom is the normal routine. So if you have, let's say, there are universities or where 50 colleges, and each of the 50 colleges would have, let's say, Bachelor of Commerce, and in every college there could be one or more batches, and in every class there will be a teacher teaching the same subject. But if you have a system like that, should each of these 50 or 100 teachers independently prepare to teach the same thing? Is that good use of their time? Is that the good use of the limited bandwidth we have? Is there a possibility that for the entire university there is one teacher or a group of teachers who teach the commerce subject, and then in each of the individual colleges or individual batches the teachers can support the students? Now, this is not a decision which an individual teacher can make. This is a decision which a university should make. I hope the university spends some time on it. Like I am talking to you now, I am also talking to university administrators to ensure that the universities take a holistic and collective view on how things can be handled. The universities or college should conduct a survey of the teachers and the students to see if they have the required teaching instrument and the learning instruments. Do they have the bandwidth? If they don't have the bandwidth, can they be given access to the studios? If the students don't have the bandwidth, how do you connect the lessons to them? Can the local libraries be used as learning centers? There is the question of library access. Most of our library books are physical books, but there are global libraries where millions of electronic books are available. It is almost impossible for individual students to go and negotiate with them because they're very expensive. It's even difficult for an individual college to go and negotiate. So maybe all universities, an individual university, or all universities in Kerala, 16 of them, or maybe all the universities in India, 800 of them, they should have a collective bargaining with the library provider and the journal providers and the newspapers and everybody else, and say, we now have a student body of, 300 million students, and we would like to get access, which means you get much better deals, preferential access, and therefore you get much cheaper rate. So the point I'm making is that as much as teachers are jumping in to prepare their lessons, there's a lot which the universities and the individual colleges should also do to help them to prepare for those. Every college should have at least one studio ready. Every college should provide at least one training, preferably a lot more, to the teachers on online teaching, because online teaching is not something which our teachers are trained for. In fact, our college teachers get very little training in any teaching in Kerala, because once you do a master's or PhD, it is assumed that you will be able to teach those topics. We actually train our primary school teachers much better in pedagogy than our college professors. So this is the time, as we are shifting from offline to online, you teach the teachers how to teach online. So these are all things which the universities should do. But even as we think those are the ideal things to do, we have no time. In about 10 days, colleges are due to start. And it is important that colleges do start. We should not wait to start the academic year for all the conditions to be met, because it will have huge psychological impact on children, on family, and on overall society if the academic year is not started, or people feel that they will lose one academic year. 2 days back, there was an article in BBC which said that a tsunami of stress, depression, and other mental illness is going to come over the world after the lockdown, because people are getting stressed. And one of the biggest stress is about children's schooling. Some of you may know that my primary background is in disaster management. And I have managed almost every major disaster which happened in the 21st century. From the tsunami, Indonesian tsunami in 2004, to the tsunamis in Japan and the earthquakes in multiple places. In each of these places, we try to start the schools soonest, primarily to get people the idea that their future is not lost and some sort of routine is established for the children and the teachers. So therefore, it's important that we start the college year, academic calendar, without much disruption this year as well. And then we will see. Right now, we can assume that we will start online, but eventually it will be a blended learning, that at some point of time, we will be able to get back to the classrooms. We may not be, but let's not worry about that. Let's worry about starting the classes on time. Let's improvise and let's move on. As we plan to start the classes, an individual teacher has to think of two separate issues. Number one is about substance. What courses you are supposed to teach, course or courses. So there may be one teacher who have to handle multiple topics. So what are those classes which you have to handle? In which language are you going to teach? Will you be teaching in English? Will you be teaching in Malayalam in Kerala? Will you be teaching in any other language in other parts of the world? It's important to decide that factor a priori. You have to look at the timetable. In a week, will you be having 9 class sessions or 15? I don't know what's the routine class load of a teacher in Kerala. I would recommend that we reduce that by half so that everyone get time to prepare better and learn the new techniques. We also have to look at the semester timetable. So when will the classes start? When will be the first set of internal examinations? I think there should be a midterm break, even if people are locked down. And when will be the final examination? Right now, let's not worry too much about the final examination, how it will be held, etc. But we should have an academic calendar which says the semester would go on till June to, let's say, September, something like that. So there are a set of academic points the teacher should think about. But there is also a set of technical points the teacher has to think about. If you were to go online, will you be recording your classes in your home or will you have access to a studio? What type of recording instruments you have access to? Do you plan to do it in a laptop, a tablet, or a mobile phone? What type of internet connections you have at home or in the office? Is it strong enough? Has it got enough bandwidth to push through the material you want to push through? Is it stable? Do you have stable electricity at home? Things which you never had to worry about, you now have to worry about. So think of both this aspect, your academic timetable as well as your practical aspect. Now I will come to some of the decisions which you will have to make when you plan a classroom. I don't know how many of you are familiar with this terminology called flipped classroom. A flipped classroom is one where the teacher is not lecturing in the classroom, which is what happens in a conventional classroom. The lecture of the teacher is sent to the students the day before or the week before, and the classroom is used for interaction. A conventional classroom is one where the primary element of the classroom is the lecturer doing the lecture. So these are two fundamentally different models. You either do a classroom type of approach or you do a flipped classroom type of approach. It is not necessary that you only choose one or the other. So it may be that on one day you do a conventional classroom, on another day you do a flipped classroom. But you have to think as to which of the two are you planning. Both has its advantages and disadvantages. If it's a live classroom, then everything becomes more complicated. Your studio setup has to be a lot more robust. Your internet connection has to be very good. Your electricity has to be absolutely stable. In a flipped classroom, because you are recording majority of your classes, you have the freedom and you can send it to the students through multiple channels. You can use the college system, whatever is the learning management system you have. You can use the WhatsApp. You can send it through YouTube. So the number of ways in which we can connect. My own recommendation is that you think of using more and more a flipped classroom approach than a conventional classroom approach. We have other options to be thought about. Number 2, will you be doing live classes or recorded classes? You can do a record class in a conventional classroom or a flipped classroom, or you can do live classes. Now, this is one decision which you have to make, and this decision may depend upon the availability of technology, bandwidth, and also your comfort and convenience. But this is again one decision which you have to make. You will have to make a decision on what is the class duration which you want to have. Do you want to make a 30-minute class and probably do it every day? Or do you want to make a 60-minute class, but maybe every alternate day? Some of the research is actually saying that the attention span of adults and young adult is actually no more than 10 minutes at a time. So one should vary the class content every 10 minutes. Now this is very challenging. When we do training, this is the approach which we normally make, that we make a 5-minute video followed by a quiz, followed by a group activity, things like that. If possible, you should try to do that. But this requires a lot of planning. It's not easy. Now today I am telling you that you should not do more than 10 or 20 minutes at a time. And unfortunately, I have to speak for 30 to 40 minutes today. So you have to bear with me. But when you think of your classroom, which you have to deliver every day, please think of breaking the classroom into smaller pieces. My recommendation to you is that instead of doing a 30-minute classroom every day of the week, probably it's better that you have a 60-minute class every alternate day. This will give students enough time to prepare, to assimilate what you taught next day, to collaborate with other students in the next day, and come back with more and more questions the day after. But when you do 60 minutes, please do not speak for 60 minutes. Be it a conventional classroom or flipped classroom, at least earmark half of the time for interaction with the students. And I'll come to the interaction shortly. This class, we are making it an hour and a half. This is partly because to organize an event like this takes a lot of effort, and there are thousands of people who have joined from around the world, and we wanted to give as much as possible within this time. But in this class, we have set aside at least half of the time for you to ask questions. So please send your questions, ask comments. I have somebody here who is sitting down and noting down all the questions, and we will review all of them. We'll group the questions and in the second half of the presentation, we will give you the answers. Now, I also must acknowledge that in every classroom, you will have people who are a lot more competent than the person who is lecturing. And this is the fact of life in future. So I'm sure that among my audience right now, there are many people maybe, who know more about online teaching than I know. So if there are such people in the audience, please state that I know about this topic. I know all about Moodle. So if anybody want any support on Moodle, please contact me if you wish to offer that service. I know more about how to use a mobile phone to record videos. Please contact me. So don't treat me that time when the teacher stood on a pedestal and looked down and lectured. That's over. What we now have is a more egalitarian network, and therefore in this lecture I encourage you to come up and say, I know this, I'm happy to share, and we will link you up with other teachers. One decision which the university should ideally make, or the institution where you are working should ideally make, is about the learning management system which you are going to use. When you do a professional online teaching, you should always have a learning management system. And there are many which is available in public domain. And I actually have in the background material which you will receive, there are listing of those learning management systems and also a comparison of those systems. A teacher may not be individually able to make those decisions. In my opinion, a university should make and obtain group subscriptions and provide training to the teachers. But I know teachers are improvising. As a minimum, teachers are trying to teach by using WhatsApp as both the delivery tool as well as for comments as well as for collaboration. It's not a bad idea, but that's not the best idea. But if that's the only thing you have, you use it. But ideally, you should have access to a better learning management system, such as Moodle, which is custom built for online teaching. Any learning management system should have a window to interact between the teacher and the students. A second, a parallel chat room where people can start to note down their observations and comments. And third, a file sharing system where they can archive the material. Students can upload their assignments and teachers can provide their background materials. It should also have a forum for discussions where every student who wish can start a thread on a discussion topic on something, and then other people who are interested in that discussion topic can keep following that thread. You can start another thread on another topic, and all this will be eventually archived. So integrating all this is a learning management system. And as I said, there are many. And preferably, the college or the university should make that choice and make it available to the students and the teachers. But if not, you do with what you have. Hopefully, in due course, there will be a centralized and better organized learning management system. A very important decision which you will have to make is about the use of PowerPoints. Teachers in Kerala were getting used to the idea of smart classrooms and PowerPoints. But when online teaching started, you already have seen an explosion of webinars happening right across Kerala. This is a very good thing. Teachers are getting used to the technology. But in the webinars, many people often overuse PowerPoint. And this has two issues. Number one, people actually misuse PowerPoint itself. They create PowerPoints which are like telephone directories full of text, and they just read from it. So this is problem number one. Problem number two is that people only project the PowerPoint and do not show the face of the teacher. And this is not good either. The teacher should always be visible, at least in the beginning of the class. You could then put the PowerPoint and then conduct the class, and thereafter at the end, you once again become visible to the classroom. Because it's important to keep that contact. The lower the age group of the students, the more important it is. So my recommendation is to reduce the reliance on PowerPoint as a teaching tool. Please do prepare PowerPoints and have it ready and handy for you to use as a reference material. But do not project it onto the screen and let students get confused between reading the PowerPoint and listening to you. So, no excessive use of PowerPoints. Another point which you will have to decide in advance of teaching the class is whether you should do the teaching alone or you should have an assistant sitting with you as you are doing the classes. And this is more important if you are doing live classes. My recommendation is that you should always have somebody available to you, sitting next to you, but outside the camera screen, who is there to give you small helps, such as fixing the lights or giving you a glass of water, or answering panic telephone calls from parents if your lecture is not streaming correctly. Students or their parents will start calling you, and if you start to attend those calls, of course you'll be distracted, and you may have other technical issues for which you need support. You may be sending in comments, and there may be hundreds of comments coming in. For example, in this one, I can already see comments coming in. Now, if I start to look at all those comments, I'll be very distracted. So always ensure that you have somebody sitting next to you and then looking after all those aspects. If that person is very good at IT, all the more better. In my opinion, universities and colleges should facilitate. And this is one advantage if you do the classes from a studio, because someone in the studio can provide those assistants while you can focus on what you are good at, which is about delivering content. There is another way, another decision point as to whether you plan to do the teaching alone, one lecturer, one course, or two or more lecturers come together and teach a course. As I mentioned, in a university, maybe there are 100 teachers, maybe there are 500 teachers teaching the same course in 300 different colleges. I think that's a complete waste of time and talent. It will be much better if the teachers came together, pooled their resources, and focused on delivering individual lectures in the overall course module, so that everyone can spend a lot more time preparing for it, recording it, getting background material, and responding to questions. If it's not possible to do at the university level, at least try to do at your institution level. If there are two teachers who are teaching one topic, then you collaborate between yourself. As I mentioned at the beginning of this lecture, the future is all about collaboration. Collaboration is what you want to teach to your students. So start by practicing it yourself. Every classroom should have a discussion forum going in parallel. This is absolutely essential because the future of the classroom is not in the class. The future of the classroom is in the discussion forum. If the learning management system have a proper discussion forum, please facilitate it. If not, use your WhatsApp or your team chat or whatever other system you have familiarity with, a Google group. But please have a discussion forum for every class which is ongoing. As you are preparing for your classroom lectures, please look around on the internet and see if a topic which you want to deliver is already done by somebody else. Maybe there is a world-class professor who has taught about, all of you would have seen this famous professor teaching simple pendulum by almost putting his life at risk. If you see a video clip like that for 3 minutes, don't hesitate to use it. You do not have to produce everything yourself. You can always depend on other material. There are TED Talks. There are lectures from very famous people. There are documentaries. And there are lots and lots on any topic, from how to fold a paper towel to how to build a nuclear reactor. There is information and training available online. Don't be shy to use it. In doing so, you are actually not cheating. You are actually helping your students to understand that knowledge can come from anywhere, in any size and any package. So please look around and get whatever you need from outside. But in doing so, I want to tell you 2 things about good online behavior. While a lot of things are available freely on the internet, meaning you Google, you search for it, it's available, it's really not free to use. There are restrictions on what material can be used for what purpose. Not every image which is available on the internet is free for you to take it and use it in any way you wish to. There are intellectual property rules guiding those things. Typically, teachers are not taught about these things, and typically in India we don't actually follow this much, at least at the academic level. We photocopy books without any restriction and so on and so forth. And so long as these were done in individual universities and colleges, it was never in the radar screen. But this is not how the world is working these days. If you were to use a content on which somebody else has an intellectual property, they can come and sue you. In the Western world, there are companies whose full-time job is to go around and see if the intellectual property has been violated. And these are not even the original owner of the intellectual property. These are people whose job is to go and find if A is violating the intellectual property of B, and then you go to B and say, look, A is violating, and I will sue them and I'll give you a cut. And we in Geneva routinely receive such letters saying that you violated and you have to pay $1,000, $100, $10,000 or whatever. There are provisions about fair usage. Academic usage is mostly fair, but you should understand these things. If needed, we could arrange for an entirely separate lecture on intellectual property of material on the internet. So as much as you collect material from the internet, please also look at their intellectual property. So this is number 1. And most certainly, think twice, think 10 times before you upload anything onto the internet. Uploading is a lot more dangerous than downloading from an intellectual property point of view. And also remember that even though you may be uploading to a SharePoint or something which you think is completely private. There is nothing private on the internet. The second point about internet you should remember is that not everything which you see in the internet is true. Not even on Wikipedia. People could put wrong information on the Wikipedia. So therefore, go to trusted sources. Triangulate the information you receive before you pass on to the students. Now I'll come to how do you get started for a class. There are two set of things you have to do. Number one is the academic part. You should prepare the course plan, the calendar, the evaluation plan, the exam timetable, and the background readings, and you should send out to all students. You should also look at the technical part of the preparation. What is the platform you would be using to deliver? How would be the discussions held? And all those technical elements of conducting an online class. So these are the two things you should do before the classes start. You should take help from the university or institution to do the technical checklist. I recommend that the institution create a template for the technical checklist for the students, and the institution also produce a template for teachers to send out to the students as to what is the timetable, what are the reading materials, what can you expect, and so on and so forth. And when I say send out, now I only mean electronic sending out. There's no physical sending out. Now, having thought through all this and having planned all this and having primed all the students what to expect when the lectures will start, then the time comes for the class to start. And there will be a lot of apprehensions in the beginning, the first day. There will be apprehension in the mind of the teachers and the apprehension in the mind of the students. Even for this lecture, even though I have done it so many times, I had my own apprehensions about technology. I had at least a dozen people writing to me that they did not receive the link. They have been writing to me since yesterday, and they have been writing to me 5 minutes before the lecture started. And you can imagine this will happen to you as well. Don't assume everything will work on day one. Don't assume you would do well on day one. Don't assume technology will function all right on day one. So be gentle on yourself. Start slowly. Take the first class more to test the entire process rather than to deliver substance. Even if you make that into a 30-minute class, that's good. Because the important point is to get yourself familiar with the process and also the students. I will be delivering a separate lecture through the same forum for the students. How can they prepare for the classes? Should they sit and listen in their bedroom, in their sitting room? Should they use a headphone? Should they use a mobile phone or tablet? So I'm not going to speak a lot about that today. But on day one, for you, even if everything did not go well, you don't worry about it. You are working under exceptionally challenging circumstances. The first course which we delivered, we planned for 1 year. It was a 4-month course. There are 12 universities involved. 1 year planning for a 4-month delivery. We still had hitches. And we had an entire technical team, maybe 10 people supporting it. So when you are trying to do it, one person, learning new technology, recording yourself, giving the lecture, answering the questions, answering to parents, you will not get it all right. But don't worry about it. You are in the forefront of a revolution, and we will all learn. The most challenging thing in a classroom is maintaining students' involvement. How do we ensure that the students participate in an online class? At a school level, many teachers are worried that the students may not actually sit in the class. They may log in and then they may leave. Or someone else may be logging in on their name, and so on and so forth. At the college level, we can assume that things won't be that difficult. Or you should not worry too much whether the students are logged in or someone else is logging in for them, etc. Being responsible is also part of growing up. And this is something which I will speak separately to the students. For you, the biggest challenge is maintaining their involvement for those students who are in the class. Now, there are two ways of handling it. One is to be prescriptive. You can say that every student during every class or after every class should make at least one comment, for example. You should say that before the next class, at least 2 students should come together and do something collaboratively, for example. Every week, you can give a joint project where 5 students can come together and do something together and then submit their reports. So this is one way of ensuring participation. The other way is more freestyle. You tell the students that this is the new way of working, this is the future, and both autonomy and collaboration are important. And we will be watching how you perform. We are not going to prescribe whether you ask one question or 10, whether you are going to share something or nothing, but we will be evaluating what you do. So you leave more responsibility to the students. My suggestion is that in the earlier part of your lecture, you do a prescriptive approach so that people get used to it. But towards the end, you will actually see a lot more participation if the students actually like the course. And this is what we have seen across the world. You will not have the need to be very prescriptive. What we saw in our classroom is that people went outside our prescribed discussion forum. They actually went and formed their own Facebook group. And then there are more discussion happening there than inside the moderated forum. Encourage it. Anything which the students do around the classroom, encourage those things, because that's what the future is going to be. Student is going to be leading the learning process and not teaching. You should also foster collaboration between students by giving more and more assignments where 2 or more students come together and do something. And if it's something which you prescribed in the class, that's fine. But if something which they brought, even better. So please give them enough encouragement and also enough space so that they will come with new ideas. In order to ensure that the students are learning things as the classes progress, you should have continuous amount of quizzes. There are online quizzes such as Kahoot, which you can use so that people can see in real time the progress which they are making. In my background reading, we have given a list of online quizzing forum. You should also ask the students to keep a journal or a diary, a digital diary of what they are doing. So what time they attended the class, what questions they asked, what collaborative activities they have done, what they have learned, etc. So ask them to prepare a blog and week by week and ask them to submit it electronically. We'll now come to the question of vulnerable students. Going digital is a challenge for everybody, but it's even more challenging for a particular group of students. People who are differently abled, who need extra support. people who have learning difficulties, people who have financial difficulties and therefore do not have access to the right equipment, people who are in geographical region where internet is a challenge. So, and especially girl students, they have their own particular challenges because of the household setup and responsibilities they have. So consider what are the group of vulnerable students and how can they be supported. My recommendation is to create a buddy system so that every vulnerable student in the class is provided with a counterpart student who is doing good in the class, who is good at academics, who is good at technical aspects, etc., so that they can take the peer-to-peer responsibility to help out the other student. Also, reach out to their parents and work with them so that, first of all, they get the assurance that their children do not lose out in the digital education regime, and secondly, ensuring that the students actually get the support which they need. So, number one, understand that there are vulnerable students. Number two, put systems in place. I will say a few more things before I finalize for questions. One issue online is about plagiarism. As the assignments are all going to be online, how do we ensure that they are not copying from one another, they are not copying from the internet, and so on and so forth? As education has gone online, so has checking of plagiarism. So you can actually get electronic softwares which will help you to check out if people are copying. So don't worry about those things. It's not only your responsibility, the world has thought about it. In the background reading, we are providing with you with a list of softwares which can help you with this. There's also the question of final examination or interim examination. How do we ensure that the student is writing the exam and not someone else writing the exams? Once again, technology has solved it. There are online proctoring systems available, and I am providing you the links. In Kerala, we may have other solutions which will come out with, and it's only at least 2 months away. So don't worry about it too much, but be assured that there are electronic systems available. But my own recommendation is that do not make the final assessment of online courses identical to final assessment of offline courses. It should be done differently. Collaboration, participation, innovation, creativity, that should all get better proportion of grading than answering a set of questions in the end. If you change around the method of assessment, then of course things like plagiarism and things like online proctoring become much less relevant. And that's how the future is going to be. Because if the students understand that their future is at stake, then they will not do cheating. In my lecture to the students, I will also emphasis on this point. But final examination of some kind would be needed. It is much better you think that through. As I said, this semester you may still be possible to do real examination, may not be. So be prepared for both. And I will make one final point and I'll stop. This is about collaboration between teachers. There are hundreds of teachers around the world who have taught online classes. They are willing to help you. There are thousands of teachers in Kerala right now preparing for online teaching. They all have similar apprehensions as you have. So please form a community of these teachers. Reach out to each other, help each other, support each other. You are actually truly superstars. You are people who are going to battle without the tools which you should have. But sometimes you have to fight the battle with the tools you have. You cannot choose the time and place or the tools before you choose the battle. So be confident. Whatever are the challenges you face, be assured that what you are doing is historic, and it is our duty to our children, to our society, to ensure that the educational activity continue. Maybe not at the same pace, but certainly with innovations and creativity in the next semester. I will stop at this point and I'll take questions, and I think we have about 30 minutes to answer questions. And if there are more questions than that, I will pick those questions and I'll start to send it either on Facebook Live or YouTube, wherever it's projected. And if you were to come out with a community, and this is what I expect, the teaching community in Kerala were to come out with a Facebook group, then certainly I'll be there to support you, and I'll link you with some of the best teachers around the world who have gone through this. People who are good at studios, people who are good at learning management systems, so that we can all learn together. This is a journey. It's also a roller coaster. Sit back, enjoy it. Bye. I have a question from Jaya on YouTube. The question is, how many channels are available to online teaching at free of cost and list out for economic lessons? I don't really understand this question as to how many channels are available. If you are asking about learning management systems, there are many. And as I mentioned at the start of the lecture, I would send out immediately after this lecture a set of background reading, and including a PowerPoint, by the way, to you, which has the list of learning management systems. Not all of them may be free, but some are indeed free, and you can make use of it. I have Priya Philip, who is asking, what are the best techniques suggested to assure active student participation and in a consistent manner? I must start by saying that our students are actually much more prepared for online learning than we are as online teachers. The millennial generation has been learning online at least for the last 10 years, since smartphones came. Every time they want to fix something on their smartphone, they are Googling it, they are finding it, and they are fixing it. So they have been earning these nano degrees on small things for the last 10 years. So they know how to do. Our challenge is to make our classes interesting as well as collaborative. So it is not so much that the student engage with us. That's not very critical. The student engage with the class, the topic, that's more interesting. So if the student come up with something which they found on the internet on a topic, then I think that's interesting enough for participation. As I mentioned, in the beginning, give them a prescription. Say that every day I expect all students to come up with one comment, one question, or one share. Every week, I will give you a collaborative project. Every day, I will give you one mini project where two people have to work together. For example, they have to read one newspaper article together and come out with a summary of that. So be prescriptive at the beginning, just to get the student started. But if the course is going well, I assure you that you really don't want to spend all the time looking at their collaboration, because there will be so much of collaboration going on. And sometimes the collaboration may go off your radar. As I mentioned, there are, I don't know, maybe 20,000 students doing zoology in Kerala, and they are learning that from 100 teachers in 100 colleges. They may decide to form a community of those who are studying zoology outside the classroom. And so long as they are engaging somewhere and they are documenting it, they are doing a journal and sending to you, that should be good enough. So it's not so much their day-to-day regular interaction with you, which is the critical thing. It is their engagement with the topic. And I assure you that our students are more ready. Question from Athira: how to conduct assessment of students online, ensuring that they do so without external help? As I mentioned towards the end of my class, there are online proctoring systems which allow to evaluate whether the student is doing it themselves, or they are taking someone else's help, or they are cheating. And this is a challenge which actually has been solved before. Your organization should procure this online proctoring system and then make it available to all the teachers. There are free proctoring systems also available. In the background material which we will be sending out, you have a list of online proctoring systems and their merits and demerits. So don't think the way you would think in a classroom that you have to solve it yourself. There are, as much as classroom is going digital, there is also proctoring is going online. One question from Amrita is that, do you think teaching online classes have an impact on the mental health of children, as the physical activity is minimum and also there is not enough interaction? Absolutely true. There are both issues. There are issues of mental health and also there are issues of physical health. In my session for students, I am covering both these issues. As the classroom is coming online, play should go offline. Till now it was the other way around. Classrooms were offline and hence the play was going online. I don't know how to handle it during this intense period of lockdown. Children may have to be taught yoga or other things you can do inside the house, depending upon the severity of the lockdown. But eventually, in the future, even when there is no lockdown, where the classes will be all done online, you will have to teach students to do exercises. But it's not an individual professor to deal with it. It's something which the whole society has to think as to how do we create more opportunity for children to go out and play and so on and so forth. And it will come. As I also mentioned, there's a huge mental health tsunami which is going to come just after the lockdown. People are just managing and coping with this current crisis, but they cannot deal with it for a very long time. The society has to be cognizant of it. In our society, in India in particular, going to a counselor is considered not a good thing, but that will have to change. We will have to accept that our children and ourselves, teachers, parents, everybody will need to be helped to retain their mental health. And there are techniques for it. The world is cognizant of it, and we should continue to focus on good physical and mental health of our children. I have a question from Rajna Thakkar and Shivkami Rajan. Sir, which method is best to teach papers like accounts and mathematics? And how to make online classes interactive? How to conduct operation research in online mode without input device? As I mentioned, there is no one single way of teaching. Think of a combination of live classes, recorded classes, normal classes, or flipped classrooms. You take the entire course and break it down to small pieces, and for each piece, think what's the best way to deliver it. First of all, go online and see if someone else have done it before. Someone has done it better. You can adapt the idea, or you can actually adapt that entire material. If you are actually finding a YouTube presentation, you can always go back to the source and say, sir, I would like to use this material for my academic purpose, and it's considered fair use in intellectual property laws. So most likely they will give you an approval to use it. So for each of the materials, you will have to decide session by session, and in each session you may have to use multiple techniques. So there is no one word answer to, for accountancy use this, for brain surgery use that. No, there's nothing like that. You will have to look at every piece. What's the best way to communicate? Is it you? Is it somebody else? Is it the students doing themselves? So it could be any of these things. The question which Anil Joseph is asking, how can you access the students' level of understanding, especially in e-learning? It can be done in multiple ways. Number one, and this is also a technique which can ensure more active participation, is to have electronic quizzes. Kahoot I mentioned, and there are other quizzing methods. So occasionally have a quiz in the class. You can announce before that there will be quizzes. There could be even surprise quizzes, and everyone has to download this Kahoot package. And the way Kahoot works is that you create a quiz and you get a pin number, and at the appointed time you announce the pin to your students. So then everyone get access, and questions come one by one. Everyone get 30 seconds to answer. You click and the correct answer comes out, and then it actually shows how many people got it right and how many people got it wrong. And it's very, very funny. We actually use it as a party game as well. So that's one way of using it. The second way of using it is to ask people to produce something, an outcome indicator. So if you are teaching people about economics, about import-export laws, but you ask them to analyze a newspaper article and write something, then of course you then know whether students are understanding the topic. It's actually a lot more difficult for the teachers online, because there is input will come to you in very different ways. In a classroom, it was very easy. You give a very conventional examination, they answer, then you are happy. To be honest, that's no indication that the student have understood the topic. It just shows that they have understood how to answer questions correctly. But online, you have multiple cues, from the way they participate, from the way they are preparing the journals, from the way they are collaborating, and from also the way they are supporting others. The student is understanding the topic well. Rajalakshmi Manoj is asking, what is the optimal or ideal number of students in an online classroom? It's a very interesting question. Those of you who know the history of massive open online courses, this came out of a computer class which was delivered, I think, from Stanford. A professor had this idea that I teach in the classroom and I am able to teach to 100 students. But if I were to take offline, then I may be able to teach another 100 students who are not in the classroom. So let me put my class also online. And he offered to put it on online, and 140,000 students went and took the class. 140,000 students. And he was completely flabbergasted. First of all, by the passion for students from Mongolia, from India, from Iran, from South Korea, everywhere to learn what is being taught in Stanford. Secondly, about the sheer number of students. Last week, I was Googling for a course on artificial intelligence for my niece. And there's a course which is currently, I think, on edX or Coursera, I can't remember, which is taught by a very famous guru on artificial intelligence. There are 500,000 students, 500,000 students for one course on artificial intelligence. So there's really, in the online world, there is no limit to the number of students we can have in an online classroom. But then the question is that, can this teacher be engaging with all the 500,000 students? No, no teacher can engage with it. How do we solve that problem? So there are a set of electronic solutions to that. Every student's assignment is checked by somebody else based upon a set of keys provided by the instructor. And your own answer would only be, your own result will only be announced if you were to evaluate some other student and give that person's answer. So there are many ways of doing it. And the future, believe me, is going to be like this. There will not be 100,000 commerce teachers in India. There will be probably one commerce teacher in India. Will be very good. Will be a superstar. Will be teaching commerce classes or some specific part of commerce class. But that doesn't mean every other teacher would become irrelevant. No. In every university, every classroom, there will still be a teacher, and that teacher can then probably provide the support, in my opinion, to something like a group of 30 to 50 students and follow them very closely. It's almost like being a learning facilitator. So the best of the lessons come from wherever it comes from. But then you help these people to learn. So you are almost like a tutor and a learning facilitator. I don't want to scare you too much, but I can see a future in which the world has not many universities. The world has only one Facebook. Similarly, there may be very few universities in the world. And the student may all go to this 1, 5, 10 universities. But then there may still be colleges and there may still be other shared learning spaces where people come every day, like students go to colleges. And there will still be tutors who help students to learn things. So the type of learning environment, which is currently the college which you are in, which is not just about teaching, it's also about socializing. So those spaces will continue to remain. So the simple answer to your question is that my ideal group for an individual teacher to handle closely will be from 30 to 50, so that they can be followed closely. The vulnerable student can be provided support and so on and so forth. But in terms of the number of students can be in a classroom, there's no upper limit. I have Daphne Mendes and Sanjos Thomas asking how to conduct practicals for science and other subjects and its assessment. Right now, this is a big challenge for which probably we are not very prepared. But that doesn't mean this is a problem which has not been solved elsewhere. There are many ways of handling it. The future would be one of simulation. Complicated things like flying an aeroplane with the lives of hundreds of people in it is taught on a simulator. It's not taught on a plane. So much simpler things like a simple pendulum can always be taught by a simulator. But that needs a lot of hard work. I was in France a couple of years back, and I went to their forest fire management training school. And the entire training there was based upon simulation of the forest fires. And helicopter pilots and the pilots, the drivers of the fire trucks, all of them were taught by simulators. So there are simulators available and possible, and these will all become available. And the examination will also be likewise. Heart surgery will be taught by simulators. So, but it will take some time. In the interim, we will have to improvise. We may still have to do practical classes. You teach the theory online. Practical classes may still have to be done in practice. You may do a little bit of YouTube videos and others in the next 6 months. But I don't think we are ready in Kerala or most of the places around the world to crack it yet. But it's not a technological problem. It's a problem which has been solved. It's more like a bandwidth issue, a license issue, and so on. I have a question from Mani TK. Maybe he's my friend, Dr. Mani. Dr. Mani, hello. Will online teaching support active learning? Most of the online platform does not allow student-to-student interaction. I don't know what is meant by most of the learning platforms. I thought the learning platform allowed a lot of active student-to-student interactions. In fact, there will be more student-to-student interactions in online platforms than classrooms. In fact, if you are in a classroom, if two students interact, it's actually a major distraction to the teacher. But in an online class, it's not a distraction. The teacher can continue to teach and the students can continue to interact. In fact, this morning I actually received a series of tips from teachers who are doing online teaching in Dubai, and one of their complaints was that the students are all the time interacting with one another and they're afraid that are they actually concentrating in the class. So clearly the students are interacting with one another. And as I said before, this generation actually know how to learn online. That's not a challenge for them. The challenge is on us. Our challenge is that we, with one mobile phone and one WhatsApp, is trying to replicate what big companies are doing after 1 year of planning, $100,000 worth of investment, and best teachers doing one course, and we are doing it in 500 colleges across the state, learning in 3 weeks. That is our challenge. So the challenge is mainly on the teachers, not on the students. There's a question from Pradipha. How effective is online teaching for KG students and children below 5 years? I don't know, Pradipha, if you are actually a teacher of that age, or is it a theoretical question? If you are a teacher, please tune for my separate lecture for school teachers, and I will be covering those aspects a lot more. 2 days back, I was talking to my friend Dr. Nasina in London, and she was saying how important it was for her daughter Ruya to see the teacher, and she liked going to school, and when she could not go to school, she was getting very upset. And as soon as the online classes started and she could start to see her teacher, she started being a lot more pleasant. So yes, it is possible to teach. The teacher-to-student interaction is a lot more important, but I'll be giving a separate session on that. Please tune for that. I have a question from Muralee. Could you please explain how collaborative learning can be made effective in online platform? As I mentioned, our students already know how to collaborate online. They have been collaborating on other things. They have been collaborating on going to movies, going on bike trips, whatever topic. Our challenge is to give them ideas on which they can collaborate better. And our challenge is to appreciate them for doing that collaboration. If you do that, they will collaborate. That will not be an issue. During the first few weeks, be prescriptive. Tell them that every week I expect a group of 50 to turn into a group of 10 and then come up with this project. Everyone get a different project. They can choose their project, you can give the ideas. That's one option. But eventually, the groups will form themselves and then ideas will come from them. And when that happens, you know the online teaching is working. Eileen and Robin Kuriachin is asking how to make sure students' involvement. As I mentioned, in previous questions, I'm doing a separate class for students as well. Students' involvement will be proportional to their interest in the topic. This is true in the classroom as well as online. It's just that in the online, they have a lot more option to be absent if they choose to, whereas the classroom, they have no particular choice. In the real new world, eventually what happens, and this is exactly what's currently happening in the online teaching, is that, as I mentioned, a new course on artificial intelligence, 500,000 students are joining the classroom. And how many percent of these people complete the course? Normally, if 10% of the people complete an online class, that's considered a huge success, 10%. Whereas in a classroom, we expect 95% to complete, even 100% sometime. So there's a difference. People will come in, stay some time and drop out. In IITs and other institutions, there's an option called auditing a course and crediting a course. When you are auditing a course, which means that you are there to learn the topic, you're not there to get a certification. Then you may stay for every class, you may stay for the selected topics, you may write the exam, you may not write the exam, and you certainly have an option to drop. Now, this freedom right now may not exist in our curriculum, but that has to happen in future. And when we do not have the freedom, then it is a challenge. In future, students are used to options. Students are used to doing what they want to do. Constraining them to our structured classroom is not going to be easy. It was never easy. They would have went ahead and did other things in the classroom, but online is a lot more easy for them. So my recommendation is not so much to force student to be attentive in the classroom. My recommendation is to make the curriculum more flexible so that if people don't like something, they drop, they move on, and they learn something else. I have Anu Cherian who is asking, and it is a very important question actually, something very close to my heart. How do we manage students of various learning levels, especially extremes like learning disorder and the best performing student in the same session? Some lose interest and some struggle, and this is true. As I mentioned, a classroom is not just a place to learn a subject. These days, most things can be learned without a classroom as well. Classroom is also a space where we are training a young generation to be future citizens. So therefore, the whole point of inclusion is important. And we have to teach that to the students. So the brightest of the student, it is not their responsibility just to score the highest mark. it is also their responsibility as a citizen, not necessarily as a student, to support others in the class. So give them those responsibilities. The best performing student, give that person a tutor responsibility. Identify 5 students who need help and make this person, please be their buddy. Please, help this group. You have a student with learning difficulties. Then work with that person yourself, but also other students, because peer-to-peer learning is much better. So there are ways in which we can use the talents of the best learning student to increase the whole idea of inclusion, so that not only they are not bored, but also they learn this whole spirit of collaboration, the whole spirit of how do we have an inclusive society where every student have the right to reach their best potential. And that's how we should keep them engaged. I think we are coming to an end. I have 3 more minutes. Let me see how I have, a lot more questions coming, which I thank you all for the very enthusiastic response, even though I can't see you, but I can see the enthusiasm from the questions. I'll take a couple more questions. Very interesting question from Jijan. Would you please share how the teachers can reduce the stress and improve their mental well-being along with the transaction of content and organization of activities online? So important, so important. I must have stressed at least 3 times in my lecture what a unique task you are doing, what unprecedented task you are doing in Kerala and in many other parts of the world at this point of time. With no training, with no support, with very limited access to technology, with all sort of constraint, you are gearing up to deliver online just because of your passion for your profession, just because of your commitment to the student. So don't at any moment of time think of you any less because you are not being perfect, because you are not looking like the professor whom you saw on YouTube. You're not that professor. That professor has talent, but also that professor is supported by enormous amount of money and technology. So that's number 1. Take yourself as a warrior, as a hero, heroine, and not as someone who is struggling. Number 2, accept that mental stress is likely and possible across the board. Children, old age, teachers, students, everybody is stressed. The lockdown is already stress enough. Majority of our teachers, at least in Kerala, are women. They have tremendous amount of home responsibilities, and they have to do all this online teaching after doing their home work, household responsibilities. It's very unfortunate, but this is a fact. Again, don't push yourself. Don't feel guilty. Accept these are challenges which you have to face. Your first class will not be perfect. Your first course may not be perfect. Across India, there are reports of parents bullying teachers. They are calling their principals. They are taking slices of your speech, and somewhere where your English pronunciation is not good, you made one mistake while you spoke to the camera, and they are making it viral and so on. So you will see all this, but don't be distracted. You are doing a historic task, and you will make mistake, and you are not perfect. Nobody is perfect either. I think the institution should fully, completely protect the teachers and support the teachers. The institution should fully take legal action if there is any act of bullying. Parents should understand what a challenge the teachers are facing and how heroically they are meeting that challenge. So the teachers need our full support. you have my full support in doing what you are doing. As I said, I see this as historic, I see your actions as unprecedented, and I see you all as heroes and heroines. You have my best wishes. I will send out whatever I said and a little bit more through email channels. Anybody who did not register, please contact the organizer and we will share that in public. Our objective is that this information reach as widely as possible. Once this record become available, please feel free to share with other people. Any material which we give to you, please feel free to share with anybody whom you think it will be useful. All that we want is our teachers to feel confident and our students to get benefited. And we want to ensure that even in these most troubling of times, we ensure that our next generation is as prepared as they could be to face the challenges which is clearly coming in their way. I thank you all for staying for this long time, and I conclude this lecture at this point of time. I'll be doing 2 more lectures, one for students, one for parents, and please tune in. Bye.